So, I mean, introduce yourself to the listeners. So, your name is Paul.
Yep.
You own an ice cream business.
Yep.
So, tell us more.
Yep. My name's Paul Nasrani, and I am the owner and the founder of Adirondack Creamery Ice Cream. This was not at all my original career. A long time ago, I actually studied accounting and finance, but the ice cream thing started as a little kid. I grew up in Pennsylvania and worked on a farm in the summer times, and we used to make ice cream at the end of the day, and it used to be a dairy farm, and that stuck with me. It was like there's three big influences that stuck with me. That was really positive. It was fun. You were making something. You were changing it from one thing to another. I was just mesmerized. And the second thing was my dad, 1970s, always had a box of ice cream every night, little vanilla, while he was watching the news. Classic, 5 days a week. And so, it always brings me back to it was just this awesome time. We'd have some ice cream. And the third was my time up in the Adirondacks. As a kid, we'd go up to Silver Bay YMCA, which is this great kind of a family camp setting, a lot of old buildings, turn of the century, and had this ice cream store. And every night, the whole community would gather in that place. Ice cream, hot fudge, I could have it every night of the week. And it planted a seed in my mind, which has gone through, many different iterations, but it was always there. So it was a really cool influence.
That's awesome. So, you grew up working in summers on the farm. So, what did your parents do for a living?
So my dad is he immigrated here from India,
Okay.
and he became a minister after studying geology. So I'm a son of a new immigrant at that time, and my mom is from Rochester originally.
Okay.
And her family actually traces back to the Mayflower. So my dad was a minister, my mom was working in the hospital. Nobody's in the food business. nobody's in business. They're in serving the community and doing public work and a mix of old and new cultures, put together.
That's wild. Yeah. So, what year did your dad come to America?
My dad came in 1963,
Okay.
and I've got one of my favorite pictures of my dad is he's standing on 42nd Street. There's a Y, or 34th Street. There's a Y, and he's standing there with his suitcase and a sweater, and I think he had $5, stayed at the Y, and he ended up getting he had a scholarship to school, and he ended up going out to college in Ohio. So, he landed here. And he's the only member of my family until recently from that side of the family that ever came. He came on his own, totally on his own. So
Wow.
nobody here, nobody over there was really in favor of him doing it. And he was coming from a poor family of farmers that they all believed in education, got educated, and that's what led him here.
That's wild. That is a wild story. Yeah. It's did he have a lot of siblings?
Yeah, so he has 5 brothers and sisters all together, and none of them they've all passed now, but it's been great to go see them over the years, and we didn't go that often. But now we've got a couple cousins that have come over, and and no one there was in the food business either. they were also into like public service, teachers, and things like that of that nature. After my great grandfather and grandfather were farmers.
Okay. Yeah. So now, how did you get? I mean, I'm assuming it's just kind of the area that you lived in. Of how did you go to start working on a farm over the summers when you were growing up?
Oh, so the farm was my dad had a church and he was a minister, and part of the church family was a farm family, and so I was friends, kids the same age, and this ties into the ice cream business now actually because we spent time. They're like, look, I was 12 years old. What are you doing for the summer? And I said, we'll go out and you can make some money, pick corn, have some fun. It was hard work.
Yeah.
Up at 3:00 in the morning, out in the field, pulling corn, selling at market. But then when we would make, ice cream, and Earl Whitebread was the grandfather of the farmer. He loved to make ice cream. So it wasn't hard for me to convince him to say, let's make some ice cream. And even back then I started talking about it. We'd be on a wagon. You'd have to sort the beans. You'd have to take all these beans and sort them and grade them. And be talking like, someday I think we're going to have an ice cream company, joking around. Continually joking around about this. And the really great part of it is that Jan Whitebread, who's my age, we were really close friends. When I started the ice cream company and I got it really going, and I was by myself and up in Lake George trying to operate this equipment, I had no idea. And he's a really good mechanic, and he's always interested in food. And I said, you got any vacation days? You want to come on up to Lake George and help me out with some ice cream equipment? And he was there in a second. And he's become my right hand. I mean, he and I originally ran the whole factory together, loaded trucks, delivered all the ice cream. So
wow.
And then his dad retired, and he actually worked the ice cream line for us for many years when I was running the plant. So it's like full story.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, so you are living in Pennsylvania, growing up, and working summers on a farm and eating a bunch of ice cream. All right, so what's next? How do you go? How do you get from there to ice cream?
Yeah, so the quick, I'll go fast over the quick jump. And part of it was, look, I wanted to work. I thought I always wanted to be in a big business, and I got a degree in accounting and moved to New York City. Became an accountant. Eventually became CFO of a mid-sized company in Manhattan. Lived in this tiny studio apartment. And the ice cream thing was there. It was like kind of, I was telling people, hey, you know what? I'm going to quit my job and move up to Ben and Jerry's. And people were laughing. That's interesting. You're going to do that. But around 2001, sort of post 9/11, this company was having a lot of challenges, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. And you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I started a little ice cream maker, the kind you buy at Bloomingdale's, and I started making it in this studio apartment. It was big, tiny, smaller than this room. Had a Murphy bed. I used to put the ingredients, lay them out there, and stand in this little thing and make ice cream. Take it to work. Everybody loved it. They're like, "This is great. This is amazing." And at that time, there's very few people doing simple ingredients or local ingredients. And it's milk, cream, sugar, and eggs was the base. It was a recipe from when I grew up on the farm.
Okay.
I took it to work. And then the wheels just started turning. I started visiting farms on my vacations. I started knocking on doors of ice cream. I traveled Northern California, knocking on doors of ice cream factories and dairies. And sometimes these people would let me in, and they would show me how it works, how they make. So I got to learn a lot about just by watching. And then I learned about the equipment I needed. And I went to the Bronx where they made these batch freezers for ice cream. And I was about $35,000 to get one. And it was all my savings. I'm like, I really don't know if I could swing that. And then I went into, there's a food hall in the bottom of Grand Central Station, and there was an auction one day, and there's an ice cream place there. They had a batch freezer, and I got in the auction, bought the ice cream machine, had no idea what to do with it, had to call a buddy in the furniture business to get it out of there, paid cash, $3,500, didn't even know if it worked, and sent it to a friend's house in New Jersey and said, look, I'm sending something over, put it in your garage for a while. And he's like, what are you doing? And then short time later, I was up at Silver Bay up in the Adirondacks, and they had the ice cream store, and one of my friends was working in the ice cream store there, and I was like, I got an idea. What if I start making ice cream here? What if we do it? And he was like, you're crazy. Like, why would you quit your job? Why would you do that? And short time later, I had the ice cream machine on the back of a trailer, driving it up to the Adirondacks, quit my job. People thought I'd be back in a little while, and it's been about 16 years.
That's wild. That's a crazy story. So when you were traveling around and kind of, going into these different ice cream factories and creameries, did you have the idea that one day you're going to have an ice cream business, or was it just curiosity for?
I think I was just really curious of how it works, how the food business works. And I think that dream was always there. Like, I'm going to do this someday. I would like to have an ice cream company, but I had no idea. But you start to see how things work, and people will start to tell you stuff, and you could start to put the vision in your head of how, at least I could see, like, how the factory would come together.
Yeah.
And it was a great vision. And at that time, there was very little local food movement. This is 20 years ago. So a little local food movement, little on the simple ingredients. And I would talk to farmers. I would go to places, and people would be like, that's a great idea, Paul, but like, you got to buy a tractor trailer load. Like, everything was made for big production.
Yeah.
We're in a different world today, which is amazing. There's so much support for doing small stuff, but it was all big.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy beginning for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, the local food movement was, a San Francisco thing, right? Napa Valley thing, and then, is now swept over. So are you still in New York City?
So I'm in New York City and Lake George, kind of in the combination. So I moved up to Lake George, and we made the ice cream there for just the summers, just batch freezer. I got a wooden box, put the ice cream in the back of a wooden box in the back of a SUV, and drove it around. And it was a summer business. And but I had to support it. So back then I would work. I called all my old employers and worked part-time gigs during the winter.
Yeah.
And then decided eventually, one of the best parts of this whole ice cream story is that's how I met my wife. So at the end of the day, she was like, totally was not interested in me. But she found out I was going. I said, I'm not going to see you anymore. I'm leaving New York City. I'm moving to the Adirondacks. And she's like, what? And next thing you know, so we've been married since then, and so it's been fun. And she's been a big supporter and a big help for all the years. She doesn't make it in the factory anymore. She did that one summer, and that was it.
All right, so I'm fascinated by a couple different things. One of them is like the trajectory of the business from that day to today. But that's kind of my wife. I wasn't making ice cream. That's not how we met. We met on a dating app, and but at the time I had this business as a side hustle, and I was working as a regional manager for a mattress chain in upstate New York. And I was very purposeful in my dating profile when it said occupation to not put mattress salesman, but instead I put owner of Eat Local New York. And the first message that she sent me was, "Oh my God, you own Eat Local New York. I follow you on Instagram." So that's how
awesome.
we got connected. Yeah.
That food brings the world together. That's a part of. It's a big part of become a big part of Adirondack Creamery now. So bring people together with food. So
yeah. So it's we were Nicole and I were talking about it before you came in, and that was we've started to I've, especially in our area here in Central New York, we just got this plethora of farms and food, local food producers, and it's a great bountiful area, especially pushing west to the Finger Lakes. But we've kind of lost since COVID. Like prior to COVID, the conversation was a lot about amazing local chefs and restaurants and local food and all these local producers. And then since COVID, my joke has been it's shifted to like 50-cent wings. Like that's been the topic of conversation. So we've made this we're starting to make this really strong push to kind of try and bring at least our area back to talking about and focusing on like the local food movement, so to speak. So we've been having like farmers on recently and just all these people that are doing exceptional things in food here in Central New York. And then as Nicole was just putting the ice cream in the freezer, she was like, "Did you see the ingredients? There's like hardly anything in there. It's all like, natural local things." So.
That's part of the beauty. It's the same recipe of when I was a kid on the farm, and it's milk, cream, sugar, and eggs, and keeping it simple is that's how you make ice cream great. And it's got fat, it's got sugar, it's got all that stuff, but it's a treat. It should have all that stuff. And the other aspect is, working with farms, meaning our egg and dairy, that's a critical thing.
Yeah.
It's got to be, how do we connect? A big part about Adirondack Creamery is I'm a small business. I'm the only owner of it. And 90% of our suppliers are very similar. Like this is how it makes the state turn around. It makes the wheels turn. And I think part of what I talk to people about in stores is this is the connection between not just me and the ice cream, but like all the people that make our ice cream possible. And we actually, a core group of the farms that we use are right here. They're north of Utica.
Okay.
And originally when I was in Lake George, I got connected with them and we did a little bit of experimenting and some stuff. And then as we grew, we ended up back. That's kind of our homeware. So we're actually really close to here.
That's cool.
And having those families engage in the process, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And everybody's just trying to make a living. They're doing what they do.
Right.
And that's part of the beauty. And the other part is it's the connection to the food, the farms, how they take care of their animals. Even our driver, like people who drive for us, it's independent truck driver who we know. So it's like all the way down that chain. And that's really important.
Yeah.
And that's that whole circle of being that local food movement. And it doesn't mean that it's always tiny and it doesn't mean it's big. It can be both. It can be both. And, there's the aspect of you do have some giant companies trying to push into that and, take over. But, I think consumers understand.
Yeah.
They're real about it. And it's a really important piece because not only is it amazing food, amazing products, amazing ingredients. I always say, look, you should look at the label and everything should be something you could find in your own kitchen in our ice cream. But then, the other aspect is you do need support from grocery stores. So, we do with a lot of independent grocery stores. We do a lot of co-ops. And we deal with like Wegmans, like they are a large company, but they're local. Really, now that they're much larger than that, they're DC to Boston, but they're from Central and Western New York, and they're paying attention because the customers are paying attention. Yeah. So it's a really important aspect, and it's been great to actually have that as a channel to share the ice cream, the message, and all those things.
Yeah, Wegmans is they started a couple of years ago, with like a local company here, Recess Coffee. And they called them up one day and said, we are trying to like make an effort to bring in more of these small local companies that have products and bring them in. And they started that push, I don't know, 5 years ago, where all of a sudden you started to slowly but surely, at least in our immediate area, I don't think you're going to find Recess Coffee in, Washington, D.C., but you're going to find it at any of like the Central New York area Wegmans, which is a huge deal for a small company like that, to get into a place like Wegmans of all things.
No, it's a really great thing that larger, very prominent companies are paying attention and they're focused on it. And it's great for the community because it's, it's getting people employment, it's getting their products out there, but it's great for the customer. It really has a benefit to everyone. And I think that movement is continuing. It's really continuing. So it takes a lot of work on both sides, but it's a lot of effort from the company because we're not huge giant corporations that they're used to dealing with, and from us dealing with them. So it's really great, and I'm hopeful that starts to bring back what you're talking about, that whole local food restaurant at the core level, that you're getting that attention to where the ingredients come from, and people are very focused on not just this is the cheapest bucket of wings that
yeah. I think in terms of that, a part of it is just that's an ecosystem. You have to have the producers. You have to be able to get that what they produce out to the masses, or at least make it accessible. And then I think we play a part in just being able in talking about it. There's a lot of videos that we could make of trying to get a 5-pound cheesesteak and as many cheese pull shots. And don't get me wrong, I want those because we get a lot of views from it. But it's also us, talking about, being deliberate and talking about and highlighting the stories of those local farmers. I'm hoping, actually, I think I have a call later today or tomorrow. I think it's later today with a farmer. We've been wanting to do this video series. It might be something cool to do with you all, actually. So I've always wanted to follow various animals on the farm, whether it's so one of the companies we're going to talk to or farms is Two Kids Goat Farm, which is here in central New York, and follow them from milking the goats all the way down to producing the cheese and then it going to the restaurant and then onto the plate. And we've wanted to do that with like chickens and eggs and cows and beef and all that kind of stuff, to kind of follow and not just show the story of that local farmer, but show kind of like this is the process of how your food gets from the farmer or from the farm to your plate, to your bowl, whatever the case is. That'd be cool to do that with a batch of ice cream.
It's a really critical message to share. I mean, we're very focused on New York State. That's our home, and I think the focus often is, well, everything comes from the city, and so sure, we sell a lot of product. There's so much interest, there's innovation that comes from the city. But look, we have this breadbasket, central New York. This part produces, it's the third largest dairy producing state in the country. So, I mean, it's an amazing, and for people to see that whole connection in the process, it still amazes me. I mean, every time I see even ice cream, just where it comes from, it comes from the farm, the milk, you have to pasteurize it, and then seeing it change form. It's an incredible journey. It's a journey.
Yeah,
it's a good one to share. And there's the stories around it, but it's also, look, this is how food gets to your table, and why it's important. Why it's important to pay attention to central New York and upstate.
Yeah,
upstate environmental issues, farming issues, like these all matter. The same as the stuff that's happening in the city and downstate matters. So like it's a system that we're all a part of.
Yeah,
I think food is a great way to connect people in that chain and understand. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. All right. So how do you go from? Take me through the next step. You buy the ice cream, the freezer in Times Square, and you get it to your friend's house in Jersey, and you get on a trailer and you take it up north. And what happens from there?
Take it up north, and it's just a series of hurdles, disasters, and all kinds of stuff to get this thing going. I'm on the way up there with the trailer, and the people that run Silver Bay, they call me. I'm on my cell phone, and they're like, we got a problem. Like the electric won't go into the room we're going to put it in. I'm like, look, I'm on my way. We'll figure it out when we get there. Find another home for it. And then, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I never made ice cream, never in the food business. I'm starting to put ice cream and make batches. But, the thing is that, 80% of the stuff, 90% was really good. 99% everybody bought. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. But how do we, and it was a summer business. We were just making ice cream 2 months a year, and then I was working other jobs. And
were you selling it, like, were you making it and to sell it out of an ice cream store or like in pints?
All in a store. So there was an ice cream store there on the Silver Bay campus that I took over to manage, all tubs. And then we would sell them to restaurants around the area, drive around and sell them to restaurants. We couldn't package pints because the machinery we had, comes out too fast, and we tried it. It was another crazy mess of like stuff coming all over. But the big transition happened was I got married, and my wife, Simi, she was back in this, she had a business she started, and she was back in the city. She says, so look, this is a summer business. It's great, but like, we got to do something with it. You're going to do it all the time, or, we can't. So I said, what, how do we get this to get packaged? How do we get it? And the dream was to build a factory somewhere along the Hudson River so we can service the entire state. And I'm on that journey, I'm looking at places and buildings, and people are excited and they want to invest money. And I'm looking at these terrible buildings, terrible situations. I'm like, oh man, this could never, this is going to take millions of dollars. And how many ice cream pints do I need to sell? And along that way, found a dairy in Kingston, New York. It was one of the oldest owned family-owned dairies, almost 100 years at a time, and called him up and he said, "Come on over. Don't buy any equipment," because I was going to put equipment in. "Come on over and see me." And I went over and he had a room full of ice cream equipment. And he said, "I don't even know how to use this stuff. We got it from a bankrupt customer, and it's in here. And if you can figure out how to use it and put it together and make the ice cream for our store, got a piece of paper, made a deal, and that's how it happened."
That's wild.
10 years I worked in there, and I learned about 9 years in, I learned how to make ice cream using the equipment. And so that was the journey. And then I started taking pints, packaging pints, and we had no idea. We were putting the labels on them after we froze them, and oh my goodness, we had no idea. Packaging them into crates, and it took a long time to figure out what to do. But that really put us in touch with small local farms and farmers, and working directly, making everything from scratch ourselves, and then sourcing ingredients. And then I went to New York City with a pint in a hand and started going to stores up and down 14th Street and trying to find people to take it. And that's how it got started.
That's wild. Yeah. What was that? I mean, I think so. That's what, 2003, 2004?
Yeah, that got going. That was 2008 when we started moving into that plant. Actually, 2009 was when we got our first Fairway and Whole Foods and these stores in the city. And there was still, the local food movement was starting to move. It started to have some energy. But still, people were like, "What is this? What is this package? It's not Ben & Jerry. No one's going to buy this."
Yeah. What were your who were your role models or examples of how to hustle to kind of get that business going, and especially to run out there and sell some of those bigger accounts or sell it all? Because I think 2008 I had a failed furniture store, and I don't know why it failed, except for at the time I just blamed the economy, right? But I think it was just a lot of dumb decisions because I was a 21-year-old kid. And but I think back to being a business owner then, and I had zero. The internet existed, but not like it does today. Today, I could pull up 1,000 different inspirational entrepreneurial websites or TikTok accounts or books. Back then, there wasn't any of that stuff.
No, there wasn't anything like that around. And I had this, vague thing that I wanted to be in business. I wanted to be in the food business. But look, the real inspiration was my dad, who was not in the food business. But my dad came to this country by himself. And, I'm like, if you had the courage to do that, you could do anything. Yeah. That's a real, and I don't know if I've, ever told him I made that connection from that, but I've told him, look, you left everything you knew behind and came to another place.
Yeah.
And, he had this dream, and that's part of the whole story. He had a dream. He's like, look, I'm going to come to a place. And he says, and he waited to come to America. And, he had opportunities to go to other countries and, and to do things to try to advance his career. And he said, no, I'm going to go to America. He says, because I'll always be a foreigner. He says, but my kids will be American. Because that's different. So that was if he could do that,
wow, then
I could do anything. So honestly, that was always been in the back of my mind. I'm like, so you just keep going at what you're trying to do.
So I think when you're talking about that story, the first thing that pops in my head is do you ever watch a show Master of None?
Yeah.
Did you see? I don't know, in the first season, him and his friend are. His dad's like, "I need you to fix my iPad." And he's like, "Dad, I don't have time. I got to go to the movies." Towards the end of the episode, they wound up going to dinner with their parents and hearing the story of how their parents immigrated to America and all the hard things that they had to go through. And yeah, it really is wild to think, kind of where that determination kind of comes from in us. And I think sometimes maybe it's just genetic.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, because you know what, there is something. I think everybody who comes here, there's a common thing. Wherever they came 100 years ago or they're coming now, I think there is something in them because it's unique, and because not everybody has that wherever. So it's a very unique thing, and it makes it exciting, because that's actually what that energy makes stuff happen, makes stuff grow. And it's I think that was in the back of my head, okay, you can keep going, and you keep going, and eventually somebody's like, yeah, I'll take that ice cream, and we'll put it on the shelf, and and then that's how it started to go. Yeah. And it was it's been a wild journey. It's always a wild journey.
Yeah, I bet. That's wild. So was your mess when you're, so now you've got the factory, it's 2008, 2009, you're trying to sell ice cream in New York City. What's your messaging then? Is it do you know that it's important that you're focusing on the local ingredient, simple ingredients, local products?
That's always from the get-go. That from the get-go, once we started to do that, is the real key is local ingredients, close to home. And at that time, look, we were just selling New York City. Everything was within 90 miles. We had this whole thing. We had this thing at that time. It was possible 36 hours from cow till we made the ice cream. So it was a really cool beginning, and that was getting a lot of attention. And look, that's just actually how I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
So like that was our real first core thing. And, that's evolved today into like beyond just sourcing that way, but making the connection, making people aware, getting that connection with all this whole chain to me is an amazing thing. That was the beginning. And then, we did flavors that, it's a very funny story about the flavors. So we had vanilla, mint chip, which was one of my favorite, white face mint chip. We named it after the mountain. And then we did a chocolate chip, very basic stuff. But then we're like, okay, my wife said, got to make something from Kashmir. That's where she's from. And her aunt in Buffalo taught me how to make kulfi. And so we made this flavor. It was kulfi pistachio cardamom. And no one would buy this in the beginning because no one knew what it was. And the beauty is that, like, that's our number one seller at Wegmans now.
Really?
That's like our number 3 seller overall.
That's
because
wild.
over the time frame, people have gotten to know what cardamom is. Like, they've paid attention to ingredients. They're watching food TV. And now it's like, it's a recognized flavor. People are like, oh, I'll buy that. And I'm like, really? You know what that is? It's like, it's fun. So the evolution of people's taste, and that's everywhere. That's not just in the city. We're selling that all over the state. In areas where, it's really cool to see people are paying attention to that, and they're paying attention to where the food comes from.
Yeah, that's wild. So over time, like over the years, has it been challenging? Because you've got a wide variety of flavors, but it's not like you have this like massive book of flavors, which I like. And so over time, has it been challenging to not try to jump on trends or say we're going to come out with 1,000 different flavors that are available?
Yeah, it's a big focus is to like. Trends are fun, and it's fun to be innovative and try different stuff, but it's always got to fit. It's always got to fit. And so like part of the strategy that we have is like, look, on a grocery store shelf, we'd like to offer some basics that people really love. I want this to be the mint chip you buy every week because you just love the mint chip. It's my favorite flavor. But then look, when you're there, maybe we've got this unique flavor. We're doing the pistachio cardamom. One of the other ones we did in 2016, I did Syrian date and walnut, and it became a great story. So I would always try to get dates in the ice cream. You could never get them in because they would freeze and turn into little ice balls, and it wasn't great. And so at that time, I got online and I was just looking, and there was a Syrian baker in Brooklyn, and he had all these treats. So it was like Ramadan time, so I bought all these treats, and he had this cookie with mamul, which is a date paste, a mamul cookie with date paste. I'm like, that's amazing. Got to turn that into ice cream. And I went to meet him, and he didn't speak any English. Took a friend with me who was Egyptian. She translated, and I talked to him about it. And I said, look, I'd like to turn that into ice cream. And I did. And it became our Syrian date and walnut. And, it was a unique flavor. And part of it was, 2 parts of the story came out. Was like, look, there's something about it here. Like in the United States, we always take things from around the world, and we find ways to make them locally, and then we make them our own. Like dulce de leche, everybody thinks, oh, it's an American flavor now. Like, no, it came from somewhere else. It's the beauty.
Yeah.
And so, this was a new flavor. I'm like, oh, let's try this, and let's see what happens, and put it out there in the public, a new, something new and different. And then it evolved into like we made a package that kind of celebrated that, people coming from everywhere and immigration, and then we decided, this is a great way to, like, at the time, and it's still going on, the Syrian refugee crisis was a big deal, and it still is a major problem. It hasn't gone away. So I met some people who worked for the IRC and learned what they were doing on the ground. Said, look, we'll give half the profits of this flavor to the IRC. And that was an amazing thing, too, because we connected customers, connected myself, to, like, learning about what's going on in that country, what kind of challenges people were facing, what's causing them to leave, what kind of aid they need.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. Over the years, our customers have, helped us to raise over $30,000
That's awesome.
that goes, to help people with earthquakes and refugee. And it's amazing. So,
Yeah.
and the story was to bring people together. The real story of the flavor was, here's somebody different. Here's something you never had before. Oh, it's not that much different. Oh, and maybe it's amazing. It tastes amazing. So, it's a good way to bridge a gap.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so now you're on 14th Street and you're selling ice cream and trying to get in restaurants and stuff, and walk me through what's next.
It was a real challenge. You just go in every day and try to get folks to take it. Well, distribution is the big key.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a distributor that's going to help you to get the product out. And so once, we found a family-owned business that we've been, with for a long time, and he said, look, bring me a customer and I'll deliver your ice cream. And that's how it got started. I got 2 customers. I just run upstate, grab the ice cream, get it to his warehouse, and start delivering it. And then at that time the local food movement was taking off, so Whole Foods started coming into the city. So that became one of our key customers. But it took a long time, 18 months, knocking on the door, trying to find a way to like get introduced and to try to get the product. And, that was in 2009, that happened, which was great. And they've grown and expanded and been a great voice for local food.
Yeah.
And so then that, all the specialty retailers and co-ops are great places. These little independent shops, maybe they're mom and pops, maybe they're a five location chain.
Yeah.
So we just started, same thing, door to door, and growing throughout the city. And then we started to come back up towards the Hudson Valley, and and then back to Central New York. And that's been an amazing ride to try to do.
Yeah. All right. So now is the factory still in Kingston?
No, so we outgrew
Okay.
the factory, and we went through a series of different co-packing arrangements in different places that, trying to find a home. And it brought us back to Central New York, to the dairy and the processing plant that's north of Utica, which we had made ice cream based there a long time ago. And it's great because we're connected then directly to the farmers, and there's a plant there. And we completely outgrew it, but it was also not possible to build this giant factory, and then how much ice cream you're going to make, and how do you keep connected to the farm? So it's been a good direction, and it's great because it's really made us more connected to other parts of the state.
Yeah. So how long have you been there?
We started in like 2016, 17, maybe 18, in that range, like close to probably 2017.
Yeah.
So that's been just fantastic.
Yeah.
It's been a fantastic thing, and it's led us to being more innovative, and like you said, having the whole book of flavors. Like we try to be strategic in, a store shelf can only take 8. A restaurant might take a whole variety of stuff. So we're always trying to find, what's the next thing that we're going to do, but also within the right parameters to make it.
Yeah, for sure. So are you in a lot of restaurants or, wholesale opportunities?
That's what we're trying to grow now. So we do a few ice cream scoop shops. We do some restaurants, but not as many as we'd like. And the key for that is we're trying to find the right way to make it easy for the restaurant to get it. Is it, the right distributor? Because it's such a great way to actually go really farm to table, just like at home, and share the story, whether they're actually sharing the story, but it fits, or if they're not, but it still fits into that whole chain. If they're focused on local food and super premium ingredients and where they come from, it's a great fit. So we just started now changing some packaging. So we used to only make large 2.5 gallon tubs. We're doing the 5 liter trays to try to make it more convenient. You can store it in a small restaurant.
Yeah.
If you got you have that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think of like some of the more hyper local restaurants around here make their own ice cream, which is a pain, obviously, and they're doing ultra small batches. They're not doing anything crazy for their dessert menu or anything like that. But I'm trying to think of like what are the really other hyper local creameries in the area. I mean, there's Burn Dairy, obviously, but that's a massive, massive company. There's Perry's, which is a huge New York State company, but I think they're a New York State company. But I don't know of any other like local.
No, there's
small...
not many people in that space. So that's something really exciting for us that we're taking a look at and trying to see, and that's actually across the state. We've got some in the Hudson Valley. There's this Central New York. There's Western. There's a lot of great places that are looking to do that, and they're also frustrated with making their own ice cream because it's tough to make ice cream, especially when you're doing small batch in a restaurant and you're making, 40 other things at the same time.
Yeah, for sure, and it's a pain. I started making ice cream at home a couple weeks ago, and it's not easy. I mean, it's easy, but it's not easy to perfect it.
Be careful where that leads you. This is how this is. You never know where that's going to lead you. And then if you have a family that's willing to taste and try it, you just never know where that's going to go.
That would lead me to divorce. Is what that would lead me to. That would lead me to my wife saying, "That's enough businesses now. I'm gone." It's I have too many ideas as it stands. Nicole can tell you a little bit about those as well. I have way too many ideas that pop up. So did you ever kind of think about or toy with the idea of like opening up your own ice cream shop somewhere?
It's funny. In the very beginning, that's where we started. Was I was running this ice cream shop, and the reason I kind of moved away from that model was I wasn't as focused on the ice cream. I was totally focused on the store and running, and it was the ideal place. I'm on Lake George. It's the place that inspired me to make ice cream. And I'm like, this is fun, but like, it's a nutty job.
Yeah.
And then we had kids, and it really moved away from that because I'm like, look, I don't have the time. I have my children, my family, like to run every weekend and run a store. And it takes away. And so I actually ran the ice cream company at night. I'd go and we'd make the ice cream overnight and drive it and ship it, and all that would happen overnight. So I wasn't, away from home that long. But now we're coming full circle to, that's a very interesting thing that we've been exploring, and we're going to do some pop-ups this summer.
That's cool.
Because it's a great way to connect with the customers. And I'm in a different stage now, and I also know a lot more about, I think I know a lot more about running stuff. I probably don't. But it's a great way to make this connection where you're talking to people. Like, so now we're selling everything, CPG is the word everybody says. Look, we're on grocery store shelves, which is amazing. I'm very, I'm honored and fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But that's a tough business.
Yeah.
It's tough. There's a lot of demands. It's very competitive. There's less margins, and I'm not making the same connection talking to people. Like, if I'm in a store and sampling and talking to people, like, that's an amazing thing. You're getting immediate feedback. They're having an experience with the ice cream. They're having that connection, and that's part of the whole thing, is to have an experience with ice cream that you remember.
Yeah.
And who knows where it influences you to go.
Yeah.
So that's, this summer will be a fun thing to see how that goes, and we'll see. That could be the next thing. And I think there's a lot of places in New York that would really be great to have an ice cream.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, without a doubt. When I was thinking about some of the festivals around here in Syracuse, or even just pop-ups where it could happen. We own, so I'm a partner at this restaurant, Through and Fried, that's in North Syracuse here, and we just do fried chicken sandwiches. But right next to us is it Peter's? What's that ice cream stand? Peter's Polar Parlor, is that it? Is that, yeah, okay. That'd be cool to coordinate some sort of a pop-up there, fried chicken and ice cream.
No, fried chicken and ice cream, they go well together. It's funny, I was in a store yesterday and somebody was talking about literally fried chicken ice cream. I was like, have you had that yet? Have you tried to make that yet? I'm like, they might go really well together, side by side on a plate.
Yeah.
But the whole experience and sharing people of how, you eat, and how it mixes together and that connection, it's a really great thing. And then the beauty is if you can do that and have that experience, and then look, when we're not there or you're not at that shop and you can buy it at a grocery store or an independent market, and then you can, you'll have that experience again. You can remember, this is where I got, there's a connection that stays with the food. Yeah,
that's wild. Yeah, it's really interesting to see, kind of hear the story of how it goes from you working on the farm and, the ice cream recipe to then now today, that recipe being in Wegmans.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that's very, I'd say people are surprised at. They're like, oh, it's you? You make the ice cream? You started the company? And we're still a small family-owned business. There's a lot of folks, and there's nothing, there's lots of variety. People get in the food business. Some people get in just purely we're going to raise tons of money and we're going to have investment. We're going to flip it and sell it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's a completely different thing than you're on the ground. Your real purpose is to be a part of the whole food. I call it the food wheel. And your purpose is, you're connecting people with the sources, the farmers, and you're an independent business. And it kind of what makes the whole thing go around. And it's, there's room for everybody, but it's really a great experience to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are your goals for, the business? I mean, do you want to, are you hoping one day to be in every grocery store in the country, or, what are your ultimate goals for the business?
That's definitely, not my main thing to be, in every single grocery store, but we really, the core first is our state, is New York State, our surrounding neighboring states. We do some sell in New Jersey and Connecticut, and that's been a great foray. So it's really this I call it the Northeast corridor, but it's founded in New York. It's a New York business, and there's a lot of interest in stuff that comes out of New York, the Adirondacks and from the state. So the real goal for me is to really be in that chain where you're going from Massachusetts, New York, down to Washington, D.C., that little corridor. That's where we want to, share our ice cream, share the experience, connect people to where we're coming from. And I think that's just the ideal place for us, because we can also share that experience. We can get out there and talk. We can, it's not all a marketing game then. There's a real experience game. Yeah. You're not just, if I'm going to try to do it in California, I mean, what kind of marketing am I going to do? There's great ice cream in California. Yeah. There's great local farmers out there. That's a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. Huh. All right. So if you were going to give advice, our audience is I think, because it's grown a lot recently, but primarily business owners, restaurant owners. So do you have any advice you would give to an early business owner?
Yeah. A few things. One is certainly never part with your original inspirational dream. You can get swayed along the way by a lot of different opportunities. Stick with it until you prove it doesn't work to yourself. And hopefully it does work. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to sway left and right into different stuff and get distracted. Stay with what your core of what you want to do. And if you believe in it and you really think it has a message or it really delivers food in the way you want to do it, then keep going with it. I think that's like definitely a core thing to do. Is to do that. And second, you got to try to be prepared. You may have to it may not be hard. You were talking about being a mattress while you're doing this podcast. You may have to do a lot of other stuff along the way to make it happen. But it's worth it. You got to keep at it. And you may have to sell mattresses or do accounting in the background or work for anybody to help make that dream come true. So I think you got to stay on that path. And the other part, I think the most important part is the connections you make along the way. Your suppliers, the farmers, where you're getting the food from, because all these things come full circle. I was starting out, many, many years ago, I was working with these farms over here in central New York, and many-year gap went by, and then I really needed to find a home, and guess what? We still, turn around and did it. So I think that's really keys.
That's cool.
Make sure you keep those going.
Yeah. All right. So final question, and this is something a local restaurant owner asked me to ask all my guests, and I remember about 80% of the time. But David Anastasio from the Peachtree Sandwich Company, what I'm going to ask everybody, why do you do what you do?
That's a really great question. And you know what? It brings me, personally, it's a lot of joy. Like the fact of that I get to talk to people. I get to take something that's in one form and turn it into something else. I do what I do because ice cream at the end of the day, whether you're sad and somebody wants to have an ice cream cone and feel better, you're happy, you're celebrating something. You're angry, you want to get over something. Or people have a difference of opinion. And we can sit down and agree this ice cream's really good. We may not agree on anything else, but that to me is that's powerful stuff, and I love it. I mean, I love the medium. I love ice cream. I love food, but that's really for me what it's about is making that connection, meeting people, and talking to them and sharing an experience.
Yeah.
There's a lot easier ways to make money. That's the other advice I'll give to everybody else is you could do find easier ways to make money for sure. But if you follow what you really want to do, the money can follow, and you can make a living. It might be a hard way to do it, but it can happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Paul, thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and we're gonna put out some stuff here in a little bit, talking about where you can get Adirondack Creamery ice cream. So stay tuned for all that, and we're gonna put descriptions and links and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. Thanks, Paul.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.